Y'all know we're in front of the Mission Cultural Center for the meeting of the minds for all tribes, Zulu Nation. For those of you that are not here, you missed out. I'm gonna keep it like that.
Representing right here, man. Big up, Dregs One in the building. It's the Rossi line representing Calafia Zulus, POCC, BPPC. We ride coming off of the meeting of the minds right here, 9th anniversary of all tribes. Zulu Nation representing to the fullest. December 4th is International Revolutionary Day, just passed, so recognize that as well. Fists up, what's the call? Free them all.
It's to bring my intellect to the youth and watch them grow higher as I grow myself.
And really see how we can revitalize the Bay Area. From Oakland to Frisco, we really trying to bring hip-hop back to the hood and trying to make sure that hip-hop is there on the front line.
And we gotta stop the killing and more building.
The struggle that we facing as oppressed people, as third world people living in this American KKK society, you know what I'm saying? But meeting the minds, it's all beautiful, it's all lovely, it's, you know what I'm saying?
We called ourselves gangster rappers. I think it was a term coined by people that live outside our culture. Well, like, yeah. And we, quick to be noticed by these popular people, said, okay, we'll go with the gangster rap.
We all connected just like this here, you know what I'm saying? Just love unity, having fun.
One was caught on tape murdering somebody. What does that look like in 2014? Now, when I came up, I've seen Bambaataa, I've seen Zulus, I've seen Black Spades go 600-700 deep to the precinct 54 in my neighborhood or other, and surround police and demand that there be some sort of accountability. Didn't mean that the problem was solved, but there was a fearlessness and there was a desire. They had no choice. We have no choice but to stand up to this type of oppression. So what does it look like now as Zulus, as people deep in hip hop, as people who will listen to a Dead Prez or a Nas or a Mos Def or a Sa-Rock or whoever? What does it mean beyond listening, dancing, spraying on the wall? What does it mean for us to be active is a question that I think is before all of us. If the Zulus were our protectors. In my crew, we had Zulus that protected us. What are we doing today to protect our community when there's so much going on? That's a challenge for all of us. What does it mean when we don't actually experience some of the direct oppression that many people of color are dealing with now? When ICE is not an issue in your life, when police aren't an issue in your life, when gentrification is not an issue in your life, what role do hip-hoppers, people who are attached to Zulu, people who love the culture, what is our responsibility at this point in time for those who may not have a voice or the resources? So that's something I want to kind of put out in the air, because I think every year we have to ask ourselves that question. We have to kind of self-examine. We have to look at ourselves as people who are parts of chapters, people who are connected, people who put out this art or this expression. What is our expression doing to liberate? What is our expression doing to oppress? So I want to kind of put that out there just from my standpoint. So I'm glad at the exact same time. It's not too much different than what maybe Big Rich might have been dealing with when he was coming up, or with Chewy or anybody else. I mean, oppression is a international, it's a national type of situation. And I would argue that, without even talking to them, that there was a political type of scenario that led to them being able to make the moves that they made. I know definitely with Huey MC, if you go back to his early albums, his first ones, on that album cover, he's making known the conditions of his community. Am I right, Huey? Back there. And so there was a politics already there from day one. And I think that needs to be acknowledged, because when you look at all the pioneers from LA to Seattle to the Bay Area, which is one of the larger markets, you'll find that people were trying to make a way out of no way. They were speaking truth to power. They were using their art to bring attention to themselves and uplift their community. What are we doing today is the question. So with that being said, why don't we kind of jump into the middle of this conversation, which these folks have already started. CMG, where you at? Come on up here.
We got a space.
Let's give it up to CMG. And of course, Conscious Daughters coming up under the Scarface label with Paris. There was already a politic there. The fact that they even took that name said a lot. So with that being said, for the new people that's on the panel, and I'll start off with you, Huey, because you would be a pioneering figure in this Bay Area scene. Talk about the political situations that you came up with and how you see things today, and as hip-hop as you know it, kept in pace.
Man, well, you know, for those who are familiar with my particular career, that's like you named that album cover. Not only did that album cover have the 12-story OC Projects, which I was born and raised in, it had a crescent moon and a Star David on it. So for those people with the knowledge, those who had mathematics, they also knew I was moving with mathematics. Even though I was spitting gangster lyrics, I still spit gangster scientists. Number one, if I spit my math in a way that the lowest denominator, the brother with the least quote-unquote education, to understand where I'm coming from, actually my lyrics are designed to uplift certain individuals so they might become more, you know, in tune with KRS-One or, you know what I'm saying, Dead Press or whatever. Like that meaty ground. But as far as like the politics of it, when I was doing hip hop, it was besides me and Cool so the only cat I tip my hat to is I bowed Too Short because I watched Too Short and T. Bohannon and how they did their thing in Oakland, and I brought that over to Frisco, and also legendary Frisco Kid out of Lakeview. You know, a lot of people unfamiliar with that name. That was one of our first rappers, Frisco Kid, so I got to shout him out. And if you listen to Gangsta-matic, I'm talking about George Bush, you know, selling dope and all of the trials and tribulations that a brother goes through being a drug dealer in the environment. Also, it's the game. Then on the flip side, something like my poetry, I'm spitting more on a high mathematical level, and you know, you gotta have your joules intact, or you know, you gotta know, you know, part of your 120, or you know, you gotta know your mathematics to really dig what I'm saying. And I was one of the first cats on the West Coast to be spitting math like that, you know.
Let me ask you this, Huey. Two questions. One, and this is one that I want to kind of avoid, because oftentimes we get caught up in a discussion about lyrics and what does it mean at the end of the day, and there's a place for that and what have you, but sometimes that becomes the distraction and that becomes the thing that we focus on. I think if we don't have the context of where you're growing up, and so you talk about OC and you talk about Fillmore, let's talk about what it really means coming from the streets or being connected to that and navigating to a point of, you know, not having to be in the life as much or removing that, and how and what the political ramifications of that are and the difficulties in negotiating that type of movement.
Man, well, let me tell y'all, I would have been here at 12 o'clock, but they just recently changed my job schedule. I work with the Department of Public Health with the San Francisco Homeless Outreach Team. So we get people off the street, off drugs, and into permanent housing. That's what I do. I also work with the New Community Leadership Foundation, which is an organization that I see my brother Jamil out there, that you know, we're working in the Fillmore and the Bayview, connected with Fly Benzo in the Bayview to do things. I kind of said that the reason why I'm late here is because, like, the work that I do, I am a community activist. That's what I do. You know, I had to go from a point where there was a time that, you know, I was wrapped up really deep up in the game. I got this and chanted with the hip hop game, and I was like, man, you know, I'm just gonna go back to these streets and get the money the way that I was used to getting it. But you know, God didn't have that plan for me. You know, I ended up going to the penitentiary, going through some other things, and then my eyes opened, because I always thought I was a rebel by being a drug dealer and not working for the establishment. You know, I ain't working for the white man, but actually come to find out, as I was educated, COINTELPRO, Iran-Contra, I was actually working for the white man, you know, or the devil. Let's not say, you know, the white man or white people. We know that that's not what we're talking about here. But that elite that control our masses, you know, I was pushing them drugs unconsciously for them. You know, once I got conscious, that's when I had to stop doing that. And there was I got a lot of youngsters that respect me when I walk through the hood. I still got some old homies, when they see me, they be like, man, you don't come to the block no more, man. You act like you know, you too good. I still get that, you know, but the thing is, we've been a soldier, or always been a soldier, and if, you know, you carry yourself as a samurai, you know, the most you're gonna get is somebody talking out the side of their neck. I fear no man. I came across a book yesterday called The Five Rings by Miyamoto Musashi, greatest swordsman of all time in Japan. And when you read Miyamoto's book, in the beginning, he was a young savage. His first sword murder, his first sword killing was with a wooden Bodokan sword against another samurai who had a steel sword. But as you get to the end of the book, he had graduated to a level where he had went beyond the need to do violence. He was able to kill with his mind. And like, in other words, he was able to maneuver through problems mentally instead of confrontations physically. And that's kind of like where I feel I'm at right now. I use my mouthpiece. I'm blessed to be able to go practically anywhere that I want to go without any problems. And I use that ghetto visa card to speak to the youth and let them know that right now, what they wrapped up in, it's a dream, man. You know, they've been kind. You know, it's the coldest kind if you think you can achieve something in life and not go to school. You know, so that's basically the message that I push in my workshops, and in my music, I weave in all of that because I know I gotta catch those youngsters' ears. That's just my particular style. You know?
Okay. Much appreciated. Give it up for him, CMD. You know, there's a couple of things.
Yes, sir.
You and your partner in GSP's lady, special one. You're all pioneers in a couple of ways. Most people would say that you were on the early part of Bay Area artists that were female that were rapping. That's one pioneering thing. But I also think that y'all don't get credit because early on y'all were doing radio. And y'all were doing hip-hop radio about the same time many of us who were kind of pioneering in that field. Y'all were up there at El Cerrito. So let's talk a little bit about just being a woman in this space at a time when it's male-dominated, in the middle of the crack era. What did you all have to bring to the table to kind of navigate some of the boundaries that were obviously going to be put in front of y'all?
Well, starting off, I mean, I know I don't look my age, but we did start in the 80s in high school on our radio station. And Special One, the other girl in the group, the one who passed away, she was a program director of the station in 9th grade. So she started mixing and scratching in 9th grade on a little 10-watt radio station in El Cerrito High School.
Let's go back to the years.
What? Something. Alright, I'm gonna keep it real. We started around 83.
Right. And this is kind of important only because I think a lot of times when we do history, we just focus on what MTV wants to tell you or what somebody who has a big platform wants to tell you, when a lot of things are going on simultaneously. So if you are on the air 82, 83, 84, then you're preceding the commercial radio.
Absolutely.
In terms of what they're doing. The only other place that you would have found it would have been Cal-X with the late Natty Prep on Sunday mornings, or KPO, which also never gets its full credit for what it did. So I think it's important to kind of recognize that. And one other person that I just also put in the mix that also doesn't get his credit would be Nasty Ness up in Seattle, who was the second person to ever do a radio show with hip-hop oriented, going back to K-Fox back in 1981, 82. He never gets that credit, and I think it's important that we kind of acknowledge that people were making waves early on. So.
Absolutely, and most of the swagger that we achieved came from a lot of New York radio stations. We listened to WBLS, we recorded, get cassette tapes. WBLS and Mr. Magic Show, and a lot of New York influence at an early age. So when we first started, we really actually started out as B-girls. We did a lot of freestyling and imitating. I thought I was a real Roxanne, and you know, Carol was scratching and I was rapping. And so we started using the equipment in the radio station early on. They had reel-to-reels. We started recording on those, making cassette tapes. And by the time we turned 18, 19 years old, we started going to the Palladium in San Francisco. And we had our demo tapes. So we had our demo tapes, and you know, we bought some hats that said Conscious Daughters on them, and really the name Conscious Daughters became of us because one guy we had a friend who just made some beats, and he always said, you're so aware of your surroundings, you ladies know everything, you're always on top of stuff, I call you Conscious Daughters. And he said it, you know, he was sort of a Rasta, you know, and he used to, every time he saw us, he'd say, Conscious Daughters, come here, let me teach you something. And he used to speak and spit knowledge to us, and all we wanted to do was smoke weed and drink and play around, and, you know, he would always spit some knowledge, and we ended up taking our cassette tapes to Palladium, and one time we ran into Paris, gave him a demo tape, and he loved it. Now, I know now that I am officially a student of, you know, political, militant music, because his whole plan was to take two women like us and use us to get his message out, which we didn't understand at the time. You know, he basically, you know, we drinking 40 ounces and stuff in the studio in Paris and say, why are you drinking that? And I'd be like, man, please, you want me to record or not? Can you stop preaching to me? You know, and eventually a lot of things that he taught us about credit and, poison in your body and things like that, I learned later in life it was important, and I soaked it up, and we started delivering more of that in our music, more of a positive message as we came out later in the 90s. So that's kind of a whole spectacle on why we're conscious and why we're so free, you know, because a lot of people know us to smoking and hiding, and yeah, that's how we started. But, you know, as the plan...
Y'all did some songs. Y'all did the song about AIDS.
Yeah.
Y'all did a couple of anti-police songs, and you also had another conscious MC on a couple of your songs.
Absolutely.
Who was singing named Mystic.
We had, for every album that we did, we had one message song on every album. The first album, we had a song called Shitty Situation. It was all about teenage pregnancy. And, just basically enlighten young women on how to handle the situation and or stay out of it. Second album we did, Gamers, we had a song about AIDS called All Caught Up. Those are all co-written by Paris because he basically had us write the song. We write all of our own lyrics except those songs because he had us write the songs and then he would go in and change some things that he thought that the message would be stronger in, which became like a crazy formula because it really got the message out to the people. The third album that we put out, Nutcracker Suite, we have a song called about domestic violence and on that, and we touched on that, and album after that we have another song about self-esteem. The final album of Conscious Daughters, which I finally put together and I'm going to put out, will have a song about self-esteem on there. Just about the Plastic Nation, pretty much.
How difficult or what was it like just to be a woman in a male-dominated space, and was there politic around that?
Well, it's interesting because we got so much love, and all of it came from the East Coast, and it was not here. I have to say, a lot of these men out here on the West Coast, they didn't help us do nothing. It was all New York. That's why when you see me at the concert, I'm with Method Man or Redman or Keith Murray. Those are my close friends. They like picked us up and said, come do shows with us. And they gave us more love than, our own peers out here. No disrespect to them, but they weren't checking for any women, and they still not. They don't really support women out here. You see Jay-Z putting women on, you see, Ja Rule, and when you look at New York, they give a lot more support to female MCs in the West Coast. We just don't get the love, just because, I think our men are a little more gangster and harder than theirs, and they just don't really, they're selfish.
What about
it's okay though, I don't have a problem with it. Luckily, I was blessed enough to be able to work around it.
What about
Tupac? We went to New York and got a lot of love.
My last question is, a lot of people don't know techie as well. And living in this part of the world where technology is booming, I think it's a good thing, but at the same time, I think it takes away from the technological prowess that hip-hop has always brought to the table, and entire industries have been made based upon our inventions and the way we flip things. So talk about, you know, looking at technology and your understanding of it, because you're knee deep in that world and connecting it to hip-hop.
Well, okay, first of all, I just want to say the whole time, when I first was discovered by Paris, I was working at a company called Spectrum Holobyte, and these are the people that invented the game Tetris. So I started off there as a receptionist, and I ended up moving into customer service because I was the only person who knew the answers to the questions. And then I moved into technical support, and I worked there with the guy who invented the game. His name is Alexei Pazitnov, who's from Russia. And he came in, I was there with all the meetings, and I'm on the original development team from that. It was a disc-based game when it started. So a good friend of mine became a producer from there. He went to Lucasfilm, and when he got there, he called me. And he said, come be an associate producer and work for me at Lucasfilm Games. So I said, well, I'm a rapper. You know, it was before I really blew up, and I took that job, and I kept that job as long as I possibly could, until I made a stupid decision, which was, I'm not gonna say stupid because, you know, it was my calling to go out and go to the world and do music, but I always had something to fall back on. And so while I was there, I learned all about technology. I started on Unix and DOS right when it started, so I know a lot about that stuff. And technology now has gone so far, and it's just kind of taken away the value of a lot of originality to me. And I think that everything is just digitized now. You don't really have to have a lot of talent to make beats anymore. You could just buy a drum kit and, you know, put it all together. Same with DJing. I look at the DJ equipment, you know, I want to see some whacks and some tricks, and I don't see nothing but computers. And, you know, I don't know if it's a bad thing or if it's a good thing. I guess it's okay, but it's just kind of saturating the natural history of where I come from, what is good to me. So I have a problem with liking things up because I know where the rawness came from, and I know the raw talent, and I know real DJs. You know, and so it's kind of hard to see somebody making millions of dollars off of it when they just took a quickie class and they haven't really put in, you know, the time and the effort and the love for it. So that's
I think there's a technological thing around that. If you go back to the days before computers, when you had to figure out how to beat count 100 records, there was a mathematical formula you had to figure out how you were going to match keys without a computer to tell you that you could mix an A into a C, and all these different types of things that I think DJs really just kind of pioneered, putting a little tape on the record so you can know how to do the clock theory, that Flash kind of pioneered all these different types of things. But I also, at the same time, don't want to limit the technological proficiency to what we invented within hip-hop, when I know that people like yourself, Tajay, who I'll get to in a minute, people like Kevy Kev, were all, I mean, serious science and computer experts way before we were even talking internet. You know what I'm saying? I'm talking like before there was a thing called websites and blogs and all that. You had people that were doing programming, hacking, and all that other stuff. And many of them knee deep in hip hop and still do it to this day. And I think that's important that we kind of acknowledge that some of those pioneers in Silicon Valley are also part of our hip hop family and don't always get the credit. Fillmore Rich, I want to bring you into here. You know. Are you from Hunter's Point, Fillmore Rich? No.
I spent a lot of my youth over on that side, but
you know, when I hear the name Fillmore Rich, I think of somebody who represents San Francisco. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to limit your tenure in this industry just to that. But I think there's something to be said about the type of activism, the type of space that needed to be negotiated, the type of energy that was brought to the table by people from San Francisco when you had, you know, your 80% black city of Oakland, the Panthers and all that, but there was a certain type of swag, if I could use that word, that Frisco had, and you kind of, you and many other people, Selassie and others, kind of really raised that flag in a big way. Can you just talk about the activism, just being a Frisco cat?
No, yeah, I mean, you know, growing up in the Fillmore, you know, we call it like, you know, like maybe a little Harlem in a way, you know what I'm saying? Like the whole, yeah, exactly. Like it's just, you know, from the jazz district and everything like that. So growing up, you know, I guess a young OG in a way. I'm 33 years old now, but like growing up and soaking up everything in my community, you know, watching Huey and just, you know, like we used to listen to his tape, his cassette tape, not CDs and all that. We used to listen to his cassette tape and just like dream of seeing him in the neighborhood, because at that time we was 8, 9 years old and we was boxed into Banneker homes. Like we couldn't go outside of Full Street, Grove Street. So we used to just hope, like, man, one day when we see Huey? And when he spoke to us through his music, it seemed like it was just bigger than life. You understand what I'm saying? Like it was like we used to think like this dude was somewhere writing a song with Rakim and there, you know, everything Rakim somewhere and all that, but he was right there from our neighborhood. And you know, of course, the Rapper Fortes and the JT the Bigger Figure, who which is ironic, me and him always bumped heads, because it was like at 11 I wanted to be like JT. Like, so I didn't want to rap, I wanted to be a producer, an executive producer, because that's what JT always had on the back of every tape. JT the Big Figure, executive producer, the photographer, you know, the whole thing. It used to be JT the Bigger Figure 100 times in the back. And we clashed, he used to always take my artists. You know, like, I get kids, like I had a little 4-track in the house my mama bought me for my birthday, and they used to always come to my house. It was like Big Rich House. If you couldn't get in JT house, you come to Big Rich House. And I used to make some little weak Casio beats and, you know, stuff with the drum machine. And he used to, every time, it was like I trained them, get them good enough to go to JT house and he'd take them. So I just always been a student and always really like was honored to be in the presence of a lot of these people. So when I did get my chance and we you know, we paid our dues, and me and Bailey, who was San Quinn's little brother, San Quinn is the guy that literally put us in any situation I'm in right now, is because of San Quinn, and JT put San Quinn there. And it was just the generations, you know, just passing the torch down. And when I got my chance and when I got my shot, I ended up getting my situation with Koch Records in 2005 and 6. And I was like, man, like I always wanted this Big Rich, but I threw the Fillmore Rich thing on there too, because I wanted to show the world how we was over here, because at that time there was a lot of confusion. You know, we had, it was 10 years since Tupac had died at that time. Souls of Mischief, the Conscious Daughters, and everyone represented it, and it was huge. They got to see the Bay Area, and they got to see Oakland, they got to see everywhere else. So I just wanted to give them my take. So like from the beginning, even if I wasn't like really pushing it that way, I didn't even know probably at that age. But I always wanted to just represent and uplift my community. And that's where I'm at now. And it's weird where I'm at in the space now I'm at of community activism now. It just blows my mind sometimes where I didn't even mean to get here, but I ended up here. You know what I'm saying? Like, so that's how I'm at.
One of the challenges that we had over the years, especially in places like Frisco, was, you know, turf battles, you know, where different neighborhoods weren't able to really kind of gel with one another. Yeah. And you're coming up on the tail end or maybe in the middle of some of that. Can you talk about, because when I hear Fillmore Rich, I'm also remembering there's a movement going on in the Bay, the New Bay, and all the hyphy movement. And so you had these concerts where people were like, let's get the rap and the hip hop folks. So there were these attempts to build bridges during your generation. Talk about the role that you have played with that. And I'm just thinking like when you brought everybody together to do the Frisco song. But, you know, but talk a little bit about that.
It was like the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen at that time. And it used to be cool. It used to be like me and Quinn. Quinn had the Hell Yeah record in 06, and I had the That's the Business record. I remember he produced 3 records for 3 San Francisco acts, and we had no idea, and we was kind of pissed off when we heard the beats, because Hell Yeah sounded like That's the Business, and That's the Business sounded like the song for Juice and SMR, that Clyde Carson was on the hook. I can't remember the name. And he was like, you know, he's a visionary, right? So he's sitting down like, look, check this out. y'all gonna, this gonna work. You know what I mean? Because when the DJs want to mix y'all records, y'all gonna have a San Francisco section on KMBL, and you gonna have 94.9 and all that, right? We was like, we didn't even think about that, right? So, hell yeah, went into That's the Business, and That's the Business went into the Messy Bar record, and we was just, always in the mix, and it worked out. But it was always cool because it was always a sense of competitiveness, because the hyphy movement was kind of like our first shot since Conscious Daughters and everyone was popping. It was the first time being back on TV, in 10 years on a regular basis, you know what I'm saying? So, it felt tremendous. I think sometimes I'm like, it's a gift and a curse in a way, because it was like what YouTube launched in 2004. So by 2005, 2006, when we was starting, or when we was getting our run, it hadn't hit in the way that it's hitting now. It's like your whole career can start there now. It was just like it was a phenomenon that we didn't know, so it was weird. We was trying to find that whole thing, and we look back on our old catalog, and we got a lot of music that never hit YouTube, because we was right at that cusp, you know what I mean, when the digital world was going to take over music. So, yeah, I look back on it all the time. But yeah, it was a great time in my life, in my career, and now it's metaphor, grew into something totally different now.
So did those bridges remain built?
No, it has, but I think a lot of times when I go sit down with the Mr. Fabs, and I sit down with Clyde Parsons and everybody from that was coming up at the same time with me, we're kind of still trying to figure it out. It's like, imagine, look, when you have like a 10-year gap and you can kind of just see the game change, you automatically expect the game to grow, right? It was like midstream for us. It was like we literally was. I remember, in 2099 being a senior in high school, going to football games with our posters and flyers promoting Fully Loaded albums, right? And when they came out, we would do decent numbers, and we were like, these people literally took our flyer, remembered the release date, and went to Mo Better Music, Showtime Shop, or Tower Records at that time, Sam Goodies, you know what I'm saying? And literally bought our tapes. They remembered it. And so I was a part of the tail end of that side, and then leading into the digital world. They kind of shell shocked us a little bit. I don't know if everybody would probably admit to that.